From being choked out for 90 seconds to being declared legally dead in the cage, these are the times that UFC fighters nearly died. Our first fighter who nearly met their maker is Mayquazel Costa. While fighting for the vacant lightweight championship at MMA Demolitor, Costa was a horrible victim of what happens when referees don't do their job. In fact, did you know that this might be one of the worst cases of officiating in MMA history? Yup, true story. Mayquazel got caught in an anaconda lock by his opponent, Rafael Barboza, and even though he tried his best to get out, Costa was put to sleep. You might be thinking, well, that's common at MMA, so no problem, right? Nope. Neither the ref nor his opponent noticed, but Costa ended up being knocked out in a submission hold for 90 seconds. That is a damn long time, guys. Costa ended up recovering, but I sure as hell don't know how. That much blood loss to the brain is usually lights out and nobody's coming home. Not only did the referee later apologize, but he even retired. There's just no coming back from that kind of mistake. Speaking of costly and potentially deadly mistakes, we have the match with Sage Northcutt versus Cosmo Alexander. The UFC royally f***ed this one up. Most experts and even fans agreed that this fight should never have happened. Sage was a fresh newcomer to professional MMA. In fact, he was so green that it was his very first match as a pro. Pairing Sage with Cosmo, the reigning champion, was just plain ridiculous and dumb. Great work, Dana. Anyway, as expected, Northcutt was brutally knocked out, barely 10 seconds into the first round. Can't say I didn't see that one coming. What makes this deadly, though, is the repeated strikes by Cosmo after Northcutt was already on his way down, and even a hammer fist to the back of the head. Ouch. Man, that was nasty. I felt that one through my TV. Sage somehow got up on his own after the knockout, but back at the hospital he had to have small pieces of bone in his face removed. I'm tensing up just thinking about it. Northcutt has since made a full recovery and is scheduled to fight for one championship this coming May. He definitely had a guardian angel on his shoulder that day. Speaking of miraculous recoveries, our next fighter somehow managed to make it back from the brink of death as well. I'm talking about Evangelista Santos, aka the Cyborg, in a match against Michael Venom Page at Bellator 158. Santos found himself on the wrong side of Venom's knee. The blow was so fast and so strong that the destruction to his head was devastating. But just how devastating was it? Well, let's just say it left a golf ball-sized hole in his forehead. Freaking gruesome, man.
So after the fight, I had fractured his skull, so his skull had kind of concaved. And even like the doctor was saying, that's the kind of stuff you'd see in like a car accident. You wouldn't see it that's very rare to see in a fight.
After intensive reconstructive surgery, Santos made a full recovery, but he would never fight again. And sadly, he was forced to retire, which clearly sucks for him and for fight fans who loved watching Santos fight, because he was always so entertaining to watch. Since we're on the topic of entertaining fighters, our next fighter almost met the Grim Reaper in what was called one of the worst fights in MMA history. Dafir Harris, aka Dada 5000, fought none other than Kimbo Slice. In this match, both fighters aimlessly threw bombs at each other, as if they were blindfolded. I'm not kidding. They were both so winded that they could barely stand, and eventually, Dada 5000 just fell down and never got back up. He was rushed to the hospital, and it was found that he suffered from cardiac arrest. That's not all. His kidney also failed. Damn, talk about working the canvas. You'd think he worked on the railroad. Speaking of trains, our next fighter knows all about powerful locomotives. Far more than he would like to. We're talking about Matt Hughes. The former heavyweight champion almost met the Grim Reaper when his truck was hit by a train. Although Matt's near-death experience didn't happen in the octagon, we had to mention it because it's just so crazy. Rumor has it there weren't any signs around, and Matt had no idea that there was even a track. Did you know that after the accident, Hughes was in a coma for 19 days? I would have been so pissed if I got hit by a train. Lost 19 days of my life, and it wasn't even my fault. We can't help but feel for the guy after all he's been through. To this day, Matt still suffers from the lingering effects of the incident. He had a brain shear and still doesn't remember what happened that night at all.
I get hit I remember nothing about the date. This is all from people that were with me. I just don't remember anything.
Thankfully, Matt has a will that's made of pure steel, but he still suffers from depression because of what happened. To stay healthy and fit, Hughes works out every day and is going through a miraculous recovery. One thing is for certain, he deserves a lot of praise for making the best of a bad situation. And speaking of bad situations, Donald Cowboy Cerrone is all too familiar with the concept. Did you know that Cowboy once found himself and a buddy trapped in a cave? True story. You can't make this stuff up. The duo were cave diving when they suddenly realized that they were going against the current. To make matters worse, it was pitch black, and they were running out of air. Yikes. Cowboy later revealed that he was overcome with panic and anxiety after he realized that he only had about 1 hour's worth of air to breathe. That definitely explains the panic and anxiety. Even though he was starting to think about the epitaph for his headstone, Cowboy managed to make it out alive with only precious minutes left on the clock.
Knowing that you have 2 hours left,
How much air do you have left at the end?
maybe another hour, probably, hour and some change. But could you imagine I had to talk to myself of how I was going to die? Like, to me, that fucked me up.
Another fighter who knows all about near-death experiences is Clovis C.J. Hancock. C.J. had to be defibrillated after being declared legally dead during his welterweight bout with Charlie Ontiveros. The shocking sight will never leave my memory banks, that's for sure. C.J. has the incredibly unique honor of being one of the only fighters to ever come back from being declared dead while still inside the octagon. C.J. received a body blow for Charlie, but when you watch the footage, it looks like he was hit with a 12-gauge pump. He staggers back and almost hits his head on the cage. Both of CJ's kidneys completely failed, but later said that it was probably due to a hard weight cut. I don't know about you, but something tells me his problems in the octagon were the result of a lot more than just a weight cut. It really looked like we were watching someone die on live television. After several attempts at CPR, CJ's heart stopped, not once, but twice. And kudos to the paramedics on site, because even though CJ was declared dead, they never gave up. They hit him with the shock pads a few times, and somehow, he came back to life. Do you know what the craziest part of this story is, though? When CJ weighed in before the fight, he was only 170.5 pounds. After, 206. You know, just a casual 36-pound gain. The rapid increase came from the massive, and I mean massive, amounts of saline they were pumping into his body. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those were the times that UFC fighters nearly died.